All right, welcome to the recording, everyone. A few minutes late because I forgot to turn it
We
on,
already talked
and
about
uh,
everything. Bye.
we've already talked. No, we talked about our item on the agenda this month to talk about the upcoming second round of accessibility work on the OPAC, and part of that project will be working to add accessibility metadata. Uh, if it's present in the record, we want to add it to the default display in our OPAC templates. And then once we get that in place, we will hopefully be able to add some filters to the advanced search. And thank you to Tara for finding a record that has some data in it. So that this is why I put this on the agenda, aside from just talking about the next round of accessibility work, but I wanted to solicit from you all if you have records that have these two particular MARC fields, the 341 and the 540, or the 532, sorry, 341 and 532. If you have records with those, please shoot me an email, drop them in IRC, send them to me so that I can copy that data into our test pool for this project. And you're amazing, Taryn. Thank you. Taryn just sent me a record in Slack. I mean, in the Zoom chat, which is fantastic. Okay. And I'm gonna move on. Welcome, Ciara. We just got done talking about the accessibility item, and I will let you come back to that at the end if you don't mind, because I just recapped it because I turned on the recording late. Oh, good times. We have it together this week. We're all good. Okay. I have a lot to talk about today. I just wanted to briefly mention the menu toggle bug there. 2080438. That one was one where we're proposing to add some library settings to turn off menu items. So if you don't use serials or acquisitions or booking or things like that, you can turn those off. There are some comments on the bug already of, hey, we've these things appear in these other places that patch doesn't cover. I will be updating that soonish. And so if you find more things that are relevant, drop a comment there and I will incorporate that in the next version of the patch. Ooh. Any questions about that?
Only
Okay, great.
that I really like that we're going to have that.
Yeah, I know it's gonna be exciting.
I won't have to edit the
Oh
actual
my
file
God.
sitting there.
Yes, yes. Well, and I have more thoughts about the nav menu, but it has to wait for our upgrade. I think once we get on 18 or 19, we should revamp the menu to sort of take advantage of some of the newer features of the Angular router, where they have title strategies and I think we can build our navigation menu from the router information, uh, at least largely. We may have to fiddle with it a little bit to get the older AngularJS stuff in there. But it would be nice if we could generate that list dynamically instead of having to edit this giant HTML blob constantly. And related to that, I have some thoughts about our access key service that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But it would be nice if we could wedge those two things together and just say, this route has this, there's an access key for it, it's this, merge this, make some HTML so that we don't have to manage this giant file. And if we did that, theoretically, it would be easier to customize it locally. I know people want to chop out parts of the menu and add things, and you can't do that without touching the HTML right now. Okay, the dialog component. I'm bouncing around a little bit here. I probably should have gone straight to access keys, but I'm going to talk about dialogues for a second. The work that we're doing on item alerts and notes has brought up some longstanding existing issues with dialogues, especially the way the focus behaves. And part of this is that we haven't upgraded Angular yet, and we will get a better version of this in the next version of NG Bootstrap because they've made some improvements. But they haven't totally fixed everything. And so one issue that we have fixed and we'll be proposing as like a general across the board upgrade for dialogues is that now when you open a dialogue from a button or something, first of all, we record what you were focused on when you opened the dialogue so that when you close it, we can send you back to that spot instead of focusing the whole body. And then the second thing is that when you do open it, instead of focusing on the X button to close it in the top right corner, we're going to focus on the first focusable thing in the modal body. So if there's a form field, it'll pop straight there. If the first thing that can be tabbed to is a link or like a little disclosure box, we'll pop there, but we're not going to land directly on the X button anymore. That means that we can also address an older bug that had asked for a way to get through prompt and confirmation dialogues from the keyboard. Because if there's nothing in the body, we'll focus on the first thing in the footer, which is usually the OK button. And only if there's nothing, like basically if it's broken. The only reason we would ever focus on that X button is if there's nothing else to focus on, but there almost always is because our prompts and dialogues always have a button at the bottom. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull that out of the item alerts work and propose that as its own Launchpad bug. And I'm still fiddling with it. Even as late as yesterday, I was still changing how that worked a little bit. So for a long time, I've been saying, I want to move to the new dialogue tag. Well, I did research on that and I did experiments with it and I found out that it does not work with Bootstrap at the moment for many reasons. And I'm going to go over to the NG Bootstrap forum and chat about it there because somebody had proposed that they do this and it's just not ready for prime time. For us, it doesn't work with anything that involves absolute positioning, and that means combo boxes, date pickers, tooltips, anything. I think I put a list in the agenda doc. I should switch over and look at it. All of that stuff that kind of like floats something over the screen. Oh, context menus. Yeah. And all drop downs of any kind. None of those things would work because dialogue deliberately puts itself on top of any absolutely positioned elements and will not allow anything on top of it. So you can have your combo box, but the list of items appears below the dialogue. It's great. It doesn't work. The HTML and CSS and OpenUI working groups are all working on improving the native components for those things so that we can get away from using all of these framework specific things. So there's good work being done to make native select boxes work the way combo boxes do with styled choices and, you know, cool behavior on select. And, you know, you can have a different format in the drop-down options versus what is actually shown as the value once you've chosen something, which we need desperately. That's like we did a lot of work on that over in the Mark editor so that we could show like the full human readable version of the thing, but then the code is the only thing that gets saved in the input box. All of that stuff is stuff you can't do with plain HTML right now, and they're working on it. So someday, once we are able to replace date picker and combo box and drop down and all of those things, then we can use dialogue, but right now we can't. and probably won't for several years. So that is the result of that research. In case anybody wanted to go down the road of investigating dialogues. Yes, combo box needs to die in a fire. We have 3 different stock reaction gifs in our company Slack for combo box problems. It's great. We have William Shatner yelling combo box, and we have the the Simpsons old man yelling at clouds. We have that one for combo box. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have a half laugh, half cry emoji, but I don't think that there is one in Zoom. Yeah. It is, yeah. Um anyway, uh yeah. Um I did let me skip down if you don't mind. I'm going to skip around the agenda just a little bit. Down at the top of page 3, I had a little bit of information about combo boxes. We also uncovered some more native issues with combo boxes. Well, in particular, the org select and the shelving location select are all variants of combo box that aren't actually built on combo box. They're copies. Like they duplicate combo box logic, but they don't build on it. So a bunch of the stuff that we had improved in combo box last year didn't ever make it into those components because I didn't realize that they were not using the stock combo box. So we had added some keyboard functionality and things as part of the Mark project, and that never made it into those other components. We also put some stuff into Mark that isn't global yet, and so what I'm going to do is pull all of that stuff out and standardize it across our various combo box like things. That was something else that came out of item alerts and notes, was that we had all these selectors and people wanted to be able to navigate that form by keyboard, and you can't open combo box options via the keyboard except in the Mark editor because we put that in there specifically. So I'm going to yank that out of Mark and put it in globally. And I'm also adding, hopefully, an option, because right now, if you're in a combo box and you open the options, you can move around with the keyboard and you can select an item and then press enter and it closes and you're back in just your regular input box. But then if you press enter from there, it doesn't do anything. Unless in the rare instance that we used a proper form tag with a submit button around the form field, which we hardly ever do. That's something else I'm going to talk about in a minute. So I'm adding a keyboard handler pass-through service kind of thing so that you can just define a function that should happen when the user presses enter in a closed combo box. And it only happens on closed because I don't want to interfere with what the standard behavior is in the open selections. That was hard enough to fix. I don't want to touch it. We did get that functionality out of NG Bootstrap and only had minimal gnashing of teeth over it. So I don't want to screw with their stuff, but when the combo box is closed and it's behaving like a normal form input, then we should do normal form things. And right now, key press just goes into a black hole. You can't do anything with it. So I want to make it easier for people to attach events to the combo box so that if you're like, if that's the last thing in your form and you hit enter, it should do the form submission from there. You shouldn't have to like tab around, right? These are all things that were not built into combo box originally. So that's going to come also as like a separate thing from item alerts.
Silly question.
Mhm.
But do we have any non-modal dialogues in Evergreen?
Yes.
Where okay.
Uh, well, actually, no.
I,
Um,
I can't think I've seen them, but I'm also like many versions behind. So
yeah, no, I was just thinking all of our dialogues are built off the stock dialogue component, which is an NGB modal. So all of ours are modal dialogues.
the reason I ask is just because that behavior we say new focus behavior, focus is trapped in the topmost dialogue, is definitely what you want for a modal and
Yeah.
definitely not what you want for non-modal. And I just wanted to make sure we weren't um, going to trap ourselves in some way. But
No, we don't have any that aren't modal. And if you're wondering, like, what is the difference? The modal ones are the ones where the backdrop is like shaded out and you can't click outside that box. There are dialogues that pop up in place and they don't black out the rest of the screen. They're just there and you can dismiss them or whatever. But we don't have any of those. For those, we use right-click menus and some tooltips and things, but we don't have any dialogues that open that way. If you want to see the difference, you can go to the MDN page for the dialogue tag, and they have demonstrations of both. So in that case, the one that doesn't have the modal attribute is the little one that can be sort of worked around, and the one that is modal is the one that blacks out everything behind it. Um,
I generally think you don't want to go non-modal unless you have a really, really good reason for it, because
mhm.
people tend to get confused and leave things littering the interface and so forth. But
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Any questions about that so far? All right. I'm going to get into my big topic for today, which is form validation. So let me go back up in the since I skipped down, let's go back now. This is page 2 around the middle of our agenda. And if you didn't get a chance to look at this before the meeting, take a look at that first link there to the Bootstrap's built-in validation styles. You can skip past how it works and just kind of go down to where it says custom styles. And that first form there where they have like a name and a username and a city and a state, if you just leave it alone and press submit, you'll see what they're getting at with the valid and invalid fields. And this is very different from how we do things now. But we actually have all of this CSS already. It's built into Bootstrap. The reason that it's not in our stuff is that Angular doesn't use the same classes for valid and invalid. We can make them talk to each other, but we haven't yet. So yay. This is
There's a super
um,
great reason why we're using two frameworks, right? I mean, I know it's not just two, but two that we're talking about right now. Is there a super great reason?
yes, there is. There was no other option at the time that we moved to Angular.
So we had to bring Bootstrap in to fill
Yes.
out the functionality. Is that changing so that we could potentially go away?
Yes. There is
CDK.
there is an option to use the material design framework, which is the
We've
Google.
talked about, yeah.
That is currently the only other option. It's very different from Bootstrap. I don't entirely love it. We would have to rewrite a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So that's, probably not gonna
Yeah.
happen.
I am trying to get us away from relying on Angular Bootstrap in particular, and use native stuff wherever we can. Bootstrap itself is often not the problem. Well, Bootstrap 5 is much, much better. Let's put it that way. Bootstrap 4 was a garbage fire. The Angular implementation of Bootstrap leaves a lot to be desired in the realm of accessibility. The developers don't know what they're doing with Aria. It's great. Not that anybody truly knows what they're doing with Aria. Aria is hard, but they genuinely don't have a clue. So
That's what
anyway,
you're for. You are yourself and nobody but you.
right. Us and our
Congratulations. You inherit
massively
everything.
underfunded open source nonprofit should supplement the work of Facebook and Google and Microsoft because
Because just reasons, right? Just reasons.
just reasons. I had a whole conference presentation about this that didn't get accepted, and I'm sad because I wanted to go yell at the framework developers.
I was gonna say it wasn't an
Yeah,
Evergreen
it wasn't an
conference.
Evergreen
I
conference.
was gonna say
No,
because
no.
we are here for your rage session.
Yeah, it was an open source conference, and they didn't want to be yelled at, which is fair. But I was really looking forward to yelling at them.
But is it? Is it fair?
It was all things open.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as open as they say it is anyway.
Yeah. Where was I going with this?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I am experimenting with hooking up our form validation to the Bootstrap styles, and it is possible. Do we like this? Is first of all, do we want to do this instead of our little red and green borders? I think we should.
As I say, as opposed to like the little like left little thing that says that it's required or not, I think this is significantly better.
Yes.
How much specific logic is for all of those like all the like things underneath that say please choose a username, please provide a valid city? Did they like put those in directly? Would we have to be putting those in? Or and otherwise it would just be a like red border and then the little icon on the right, which I think
Correct.
still looks a little better than the like
Mhm.
single sliver.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
with
having all of
my
that
experience
text
with
there
all
is
of
a
the
lot.
colors and also just crying at combo bucks, it does often feel like when ng bootstrap when bootstrap is in charge of something, it is like a black box that I can no longer change anything with, where which
Mhm.
which leaves me like, okay, well, I just can't do this and I must do something much worse to get around it.
Yeah.
Uh
This is pretty nice. It's all based on variables, at least in the current version. So it is fairly easy to override. And I put a link to a Stack Blitz demo that I forked from someone else who was demonstrating how to change the valid and invalid classes in Angular, or how to add to them at least. So the ng valid and all of that is still there, but we're adding the ones that Bootstrap uses automatically, which is nice. The trick here is that a lot of these assume that there is a form tag around the form fields, and we don't generally use those.
Is there a
but
good reason
we
to
should.
not use them?
No. The only reason I think that we haven't used them is that a lot of old school Angular tutorials didn't bother.
Right.
They would just put the input there and then attach an event to it and call it a day.
But I
And
can't help but think that a lot of things that especially accessibility minded folks might be using are going to expect the form field anyways, so adding it is a good idea.
yes, we have to make sure we don't break anything, of course. But I was, if I hadn't been massively busy this morning, I was going to give me 2 minutes. I was going to comment on Jane's post to the developers mailing list this morning about standardizing the way that we do our components. and throw in that we need to, I need my headphones real quick, sorry. It would be a good opportunity to also review how we do forms. Let's put it that way. I think we can get a lot of this logic without rewriting our forms. As Stephen said, we would need to write in all of the messages by hand. But those need to be there anyway, because we need Aria. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
No?
It's
You
quiet
can?
though.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's a lot quieter than it was before.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Can you hear us?
How's this?
Good, but can
Better?
you hear
Okay.
us?
Yes, I can. It took me a
Okay.
second. Sorry about that. Yes. Background noise happening. Needed to tune that out real quick. We don't have to rewrite all of our stuff. We can put in a few styles to make sure that these do get added at the right time. But one of the issues with our stuff in Angular 15 is that there is no way to delay the validation. It happens as soon as you exit or on the blur event. So as soon as you move focus off that input, it validates. We probably don't want all this to show up until someone tries to submit the form in some cases.
Mhm.
I think it depends. A lot of times you don't need to know until you're done.
Mhm.
And in 17 and up, you can choose to only validate when the form is submitted. So this is not something I'm going to be proposing until we're done upgrading to either 18 or 19, whichever we decide to do. But I wanted to throw it out there and see what you all think. If you kind of want to start thinking as you, for those who are developers in the room, as you're developing forms, if you want to start thinking about those validation messages and how to put them in, we just need to put the right classes on the message. And I'm in my copious spare time, I will write a wiki page on how we should do this, because as usual, the default Bootstrap implementation is not quite right for Aria. It's close, but no cigar.
Mhm.
I
Go ahead.
super like the messages.
Mhm.
Having messages and like having to have had the developer actually choose words instead of it just being automatically
Mhm.
this was required, that maybe there's a better message,
Mhm.
is very good. On the other hand, I have some definite thoughts about the styles that are implemented here. I am not sure we need green for valid at all. I think just not styling anything that hasn't failed verification is sufficient. Um,
Yes, the only time I
mhm.
disagree is when you originally had something that was invalid and you've just edited it, and we
I
want
could
to
see
tell
that.
you that you now got it right.
Though I'd probably also be happy with simply having the thing saying that it's wrong go away.
Yeah.
If it changed green at that point, that would be very reassuring. But having all the things turn green feels very strange to me. The other thing is the quantity of color. So if it's just a few messages, having the messages be red or green is nice. But I feel like if you're going to have things like the look good messages that appear on some of these, an example, confirming that something was done correctly, that can be a lot of green to add to the page. And I definitely do not like the amount of red you're getting for something like the checkbox when it's unchecked. Like having the message you must agree before submitting being red is good. It attracts the eyes. Red says this is where the problem is. But having the checkbox and the original text of the control change red as well is excessive, and it actually makes agree to terms and conditions look like part of the problem. Like, I don't want the control to change. I just want the message saying it's a problem to
Yeah,
change. If it was you could put a border around it in red, maybe, but please don't change the checkbox and the text itself.
I agree with you. I think that, well, I want to say, first of all, that these only show up for required fields.
Mhm.
And in this form, for demonstration purposes, they made every field required.
Mhm.
So we would only see it on, you know, a few fields out of an entire form. I agree with you about the checkbox styling. The reason they did it this way was that this was released before the CSS has function became
Mm.
available in all browsers. So now we can easily style a box that contains a required checkbox that hasn't been checked.
Mhm.
At the time, they could only style the checkbox. And so that's
This
they
was
did.
what was easiest to implement.
Literally, it was the only reason, it's the only thing that was possible at the time
Mm.
using CSS.
Right.
You know, you'd have to use JavaScript in the old days to do what we can now do using the has selector. So I think that we could tweak this, and I expect that by the time we get around to implementing it, the default styles may have changed a bit, not least because I'm planning to go in and make some suggestions in the forum. But overall, the direction of this, I wanted to kind of check with you all and see if you like it. Generally, caveats aside. And I think I definitely want to propose that we move to this sort of inline message style instead of using toasts to tell you about things.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to move from the thing that the message is about.
Don't make my eyes work.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I also would love for toasts to go away forever. Having worked a bunch on improving them, I now want to get rid of them entirely.
I like
No,
the
I always
toasts.
did.
I like the toasts that are just success toasts, but
Yeah.
I don't think they're obvious enough for errors.
I agree.
Going back to the question of like verify on submit, verify on blur, it does occur to me that there are certain types of things for which it's an actual format that is being verified, where it's very nice to have the immediate feedback.
Yes.
Like if a particular date format or, you know, way of entering a number, you have to have this punctuation or something like that. That's really nice to know before the form is submitted. Hate to change the answer from like simple to it depends, but
No, but that's correct. I mean, absolutely.
And that's how it like, yeah, would be implemented with us anyway, too, because when something doesn't look right, you like make a change specifically for the part of Evergreen you're putting it on.
Yeah. Okay. So I've made mental notes about all the sort of caveats that we need to discuss as we think about moving to this. But like I said, I won't be proposing this until we do the upgrade. Did I link the bug in there to the Angular 18 upgrade bug? There is one. And I no longer
Yes.
remember.
You
Okay.
did.
yes, you linked to it.
Fantastic. Okay. The second thing that I have in here, I'm going to make this bold, is an error summary component. And I had hoped to have this ready to show you all today. It is yet another piece that came out of working on the items, alerts, and notes.
Please.
Yeah. So in addition to whatever inline styling we have, this one would be a drop-in that you would put like at the top of your form. And I'm making it a little its own little component, and it's just called, e.g. error summary or something like that. And then instead of disabling a form button, what you do is, in the case that it would in the past have been disabled, you say focus on the error summary or show the error summary. So that summary doesn't show up until you press submit. And then if you've missed something, we not only get the invalid styling, but we also get a list at the top, and it has links. And if you click the link, it focuses directly on the field that you screwed up. I am also making it work. Go ahead, Ruth.
Nope, you go ahead and then I'll ask.
I'm making it work across tabs. Since we were seeing this in the items alerts thing, there's stuff that's on the holdings tab that you might want to fix. And then there's stuff that's in the item attributes tab that might be broken. And so, but there's kind of a caveat here with how nav tabs work. And so I'll have to document all of that. But I do have it sort of working so that if it finds errors across tabs, it'll show you a list of tabs. And in each one, it will show you a list of the errors. And if you click something that's not in your current tab, it will switch tabs first and then focus on the thing that's broken.
That's very
I'm
fancy.
having
I like it.
trouble visualizing
That
the
sounds
tab
awesome.
thing. Are we
Tab
talking
thing?
about browser tabs or a
No.
tabbed interface within Evergreen?
A tabbed interface within Evergreen.
Okay, and where would this happen that we're submitting something with multiple errors across multiple tabs?
Item attributes with required fields.
If you
Okay,
don't have it unified,
And
but
you
even
have
if you do
is
have
that
it
something
unified,
that when I was testing, I hardly ever saw because I turned on the unified editor?
Probably.
Okay.
I'm dealing with exactly this problem right now with adding required parts and submitting them of like I can't turn off the button because the other part of the holdings editor is like not real right now, so it can't run the
Yes.
check.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes. So that is a challenge because the way NGB navs work by default is that when you switch tabs, the old one is completely removed from the HTML. It's deleted. So all of that stuff goes away and you can no longer look for form fields that are missing. And then when you switch back, it rebuilds that HTML, which is super slow.
who loves having it the separate tabs? Is there somebody that loves having the separate tabs? Does anybody automatically go in and hit that unified?
One of the questions that we get fairly consistently when people wipe out their settings is that they don't understand why some of their information is gone from the
And
first
yeah,
tab.
you just described exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a feeling that the reason I shouldn't speak when I don't know the history. As we discovered in the Mark editor, the reason that things were done as separate components initially was that combo boxes were super, super slow to load.
I think that is it. And because there's so much functionality in that page, it just split it up. And I do remember that conversation, but things have changed and it loads real consistently for me and it has production and all sorts of things. So,
and we can make it load even faster. I do agree that I think now that we've done a ton of work on this screen, I do think that we should talk about doing away with the separate tabs here.
from your mouth to the development god's ears.
Would it be useful to just have it default to the combined one instead of doing away with it
Ooh, that's a
entirely?
good, yeah.
Yeah.
You already started hearing them, didn't you? Those catalogers in the back. You heard them.
Although
I
I
heard
already
them.
pictured the sequel that like inverts the setting name and like just everyone who doesn't have the
Can we
setting
get a
gets it.
quadruple negative somewhere?
How about we keep the setting and we just invert what the UI does.
Steven's writing a patch for it as we speak,
Is
even
there a
though
Launchpad
there's
ticket for this?
development
Absolutely.
happening. What?
Is there a Launchpad bug for the to talk
I don't-
about getting rid of the tabs? Or
I don't think
just like-
so,
I don't
okay.
think-
but
I
I'd be
don't
glad to.
remember
I'd
seeing-
be glad to make one.
Don't do me a favor personally and don't do it
Uh-huh.
until after the items alerts project.
Oh, I'll just make a note right here, that as soon as we get done with that, that we'll put in a Launchpad ticket
you.
for it.
Yeah. Just to make
I
my
also-
team not cry.
I also don't actually plan to do that because I really want to get back to print labels and like actually
Mm.
putting it in a Launchpad ticket so I can know all of the things I'm doing wrong.
Yes. Are you still messing around with drag and drop interfaces, by the way?
The drag and drop bits of it are like mostly done.
Okay, cool. Jane was asking about drag and drop the other day, and I put a link into IRC to a new drag and drop library that just came out that I was very interested in, and I will send you that separately so that we can talk about it. But I thought all of us who are working on drag and drop stuff should put our heads together and unify our logic, because right now we have, again, copies of things that don't quite work exactly the same way, and we should just unify all of that stuff. And that is the end of our agenda. We're right on time, amazingly. So
Put in chat earlier in chat 2 other records that
saw.
Tara found. Okay, I wanted to make sure you
Thank
got
you.
those.
I did. I opened those while I was talking.
Okay.
So
And I did
thank
have
you
a
so much.
question about
Uh-huh.
the error.
Mhm.
I'm gonna call it error logging, even though it's not an error log.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of is, but are you expecting that to come out with the items project, or okay, no, that's okay. It's okay to say no. That is
No.
okay.
It's 99.5% there, but it's not there.
Yeah.
It's so close. If you I'm gonna end the
I'm
meeting and
sorry,
turn
I
off the
zoned. I
recording.
have an
No, we're all
email
good.
about the project right now, and I'm
all
trying to
good.
decide how to respond with my face.
Yes. Okay. I'm gonna turn off the recording, but stick around if you're in the call.
Great.
Oops. And hit the wrong thing.